And thank you for all you've done for Children of the Night. You built me the perfect studio for podcasts. And I've got great privacy. I've got acoustic control, noise reduction, good lighting, so I always look good. Perfect webcam, so I can look at whoever I'm speaking to without having to move around or look around at other things. The microphone's great, the noise reduction. It's been absolutely incredible. So incredible that we've done many podcasts, and now we're going to create my own podcast.
George the Tech.
Hello, everybody. It's George the Tech with a unique opportunity today to talk to somebody who falls outside of our normal realm of who we interview and who we work with. And it's a really cool opportunity. And today, I want you to meet Dr. Lois Lee, the CEO of the Children of the Night Foundation. How are you, Dr. Lois?
I'm good. Thank you so much, George, for this opportunity.
Obviously, a lot of folks that are familiar with Children of the Night know who you are, but for our audience, because this is a unique kind of thing that's outside of our normal realm, I'd love to know a little bit more about you, a little bit more about your background. I know you've told this story 1,000 times, but tell our new audience a little bit about your background and why you started Children of the Night.
Well, I grew up in South Bay, Southern California, and I was going to college, and I was in a PhD program at UCLA, and I wanted to be a college professor like my other college professors and live at the beach and have summers off and all the holidays, and they made good money, and that's where I was headed. And at UCLA, they told me they would no longer accept my qualitative analysis, that I had to do quantitative analysis, and they wanted me to research the census data to predict racial riots. And I didn't want to do that. And I'd met up with advocates for the sex workers, and some ACLU members suggest I sue LAPD, and that would give me access to all the police reports, and that would be my data. And I thought that was a great idea, but a lot of people didn't. Mm-hmm. And the police went to UCLA and said, you're giving her credibility to sue us. And so they wouldn't let me go forward after several years and after I completed all my coursework. But anyway, I'm the reason now that men are arrested for soliciting prostitutes. And that was not my intent. My intent was to, if men were arrested, men who were married and have jobs, that they'd see how silly the law is and that no one should go to jail for prostitution. It's a social problem and there should be social intervention. So in the process, I met many young prostitutes. I was a statistician, and I met them in the courtroom when I was testifying to what I found in the police reports. And many of them ended up being involved in the Hillside Strangler. And one of them gave me a tip one night that a girl was missing. I proceeded to call the police. They didn't respond. I sat in the police station all night. I called NBC Warren Wilson, news reporter, at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, get up, we got another one. And he went out to the address, and it was a secure building, and her car was there, and we couldn't get the police to come. And the next morning, I called a friend in homicide who knew me, knew my family, and said, you mean they didn't take a report from you? And we'd been arguing for years about how the police treated women. And I said, that's what happened. And he said, we got a body. She's a 17-year-old girl. She's Hillside Strangler victim number 11. Where are you? And so that preceded the chase, and the reporter called me. He was at the apartment and said, there's 50 LAPD cops. If there's any evidence, they trampled it. And he met me at the sheriff's station to do an interview where they confirmed that it was the girl I reported missing. And I said, I'm going to the apartment building. And there I just, without a lot of thought, I just went for it. I mean, I started screaming at the police saying he's in this building. He's here now. This is where he brought her. And they had gone to each of the apartment buildings and asked everybody for their driver's license. And Kenneth Bianchi, who was one of the stranglers, scammed his way out of that. And if they would have seen his license, they would have seen the address on his license was the same as the previous victim, and DMV would have showed that they were all the same addresses as all the victims. They had them, and then they would have had him the night before. So I caught him twice.
You were doing their job.
Yep. And I was very angry in front page news. And I said, if you're involved in the prostitution business and you think you know who the Hillside Strangler is and don't want to talk to the police, don't call them, call me. And I became a legend in the underground overnight among mafia, organized crime, strip club owners, pornographers, pimps, call girls, madams, you name it. And
how did you feel about your safety through that whole process?
Well, I was very fortunate because ABC, NBC, and KFWB gave me full-time reporters. And every morning we met in my house and we went through the phone calls that came in, and ABC took the line of whether it was a cop, and KFWB took the angle of whether they were escort operators. I could go to pimp bars, and Warren and I would go, and there'd be long lines around the block, and they'd see me and they'd just escort me in. So, and they talked to me. And, at one point, the police gave me some pictures, and one was of a black guy. One was an older white woman who looked like she worked in a coffee shop, an older white guy that hung out at the railroad tracks. And I was asking people on the street what they knew about him. And the black guy called me, and he said to me, what are you doing passing my picture around the street? Well, I didn't even think. I said, what the hell you have to do with the Hillside Strangler? And he said, nothing. I'm a heroin dealer in Carson, and my house is I'm in a fort, and the cops can't get to me, and they set you up. It's not us, and we're not going to hurt you. So I just continued to run. I received support from some of the most unconventional places. And
you built trust among
the police followed me. I was more afraid of the police than anyone else because I was very outspoken, and I was receiving threats from the police to beat me up. And the underworld, particularly in the media, protected me.
Is this an example of how light disinfects, as they say?
Yes, I think so. I think it's a good example of how light disinfects. And that just thrust me into the world. And what I found out from organized crime and strip club owners and all those people is that children were hitting their businesses at record numbers because Congress had changed the law on runaways, saying that the police could no longer arrest children who ran away, were curfew, or truancy. So the kids were on the streets saying na, 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 na to the police because they couldn't detain them. And they were entering the sex trade. And a lot of people welcomed, not the owners, because they were the ones who would go to jail. And so they were the ones who actually referred kids to me, and even pimps, people that didn't want to be arrested for having kids around. And over the next 3 years, 250 kids came through my apartment. And the rest is history. It's just from one program to another program. I caught the attention of President Reagan, of all people, and received a presidential award from President Reagan presented to me at the White House. And the Reagan cabinet helped me and waved me around as the Republican solution to social problems. It was private money, a private initiative. It was all volunteerism, which was, President Reagan's big thing.
Yeah. So the initial creation of the organization, what was the trigger point where you're like, this is a program?
It was definitely the Hillside Strangler and finding kids and fighting with the police because the police would say they're whores, they're not children. That changed my life. And I proved to them that it was children. And one police officer took pity on me because they had a young girl who was 13 years old. They kept putting her in jail, and I kept moving her from jail into juvenile hall and into the juvenile court. And they were calling me liars and all kinds of stuff. And this one vice cop said, you want to prove she's a juvenile? And I said, sure. He says, have her mother tell X, go to the sheriff's station where she lives and tell X the birth certificate to me. And they said, my God, that little girl's 13 years old. She's absolutely right. And from that day on, the police were really with me side by side. And, the chief of police, Daryl Gates, who ended up with a terrible reputation, he really was my hero. He told the police, do not touch, do not talk, leave her alone. We support her. Do not let anything happen to that little girl. And so I had lots and lots of police support who helped me build Children of the Night, actually, and didn't put my kids in jail and helped me get them out of juvenile hall. And finally, I'd raised the Reagan Kitchen Cabinet gave me enough money to set up a drop-in center, and the police put a car right there in the driveway, the school car. So I always had help and thousands of kids. I started the anti-child sex trafficking movement, and it wasn't called that then. They were called prostitutes. And right. Many of the kids still refer to themselves as prostitutes. Since that time, I've helped 17,000 young people.
Incredible. And have you been based in Los Angeles this entire time?
I've been all over the world, but the 17,000 were in the United States. And I continue to help hundreds.
It's amazing. So obviously I've been to the facility because we set up your studio there. And so I saw how many people are in there on phone calls, right?
Receiving calls from all
what's
over
going on?
What's
going on at the facility?
We offer a high school diploma because I really believe education is the only reasonable exit point to prostitution. And you're going to need it whether you like it or not when you're older. And so we offer one-on-one Zoom tutoring for the GED. And we teach to the test. So we're teaching you how to pass that test. It's not about credits. It doesn't take forever. And if a child can read, they can pass 3 sections of that test. And so we'll send them out to test right away to give them the hope where they say, oh my goodness, all I need is math and I'll have a high school diploma. And the case managers dovetail with the tutors. And the case managers have kids who obviously are drug addicts who are not ready for tutoring. They have other kids with severe mental health issues. But they also support kids that we're tutoring and all of a sudden disappear. We even took it globally, but our donors were really committed, saying they wanted their money, US dollars, spent on US kids. So we had to drop our global program last year, which was very sad because we had kids all over Africa, Southeast Asia. It's been very, very successful. And now we host our high school graduation right here in the premises with caps and gowns and a dinner and grad nights at Universal Studios. And we only allow in really our major donors, or if someone really wants to come. Our friends from Warner Brothers, our volunteers have been with us for years, come in and decorate for graduation and have the graduation music. It's a formal event, and these kids get up and they cry and they talk about how I never thought I could do this. Yeah. One little girl last year said, I've been in 16 educational programs. This is the only one that, when I didn't show up, they found me. I don't know how they found me, but they tracked me down. So, it was really it's pretty magical. And you can see them on our website under graduation under programs.
You're right there in the shadows of Universal Studios. So that all makes sense. I mean, you're in the footprint of the Hollywood studio system. It's all right there in your backyard.
Yes.
Doing appearances. Always it was going to a station or a station coming to you or going to a show. But when did you realize, oh my gosh, I have to do these interviews from my office now?
Well, I've been doing it from Zoom for quite a while because media changed during the pandemic and it's never come right back. And I have a media team who tries to book me on television shows. And even, I was doing Fox and the Riley reports and everything through Zoom. And then my media team said it's really hard to book you on these shows because they're not spending travel expense and hotels anymore. And they're selecting their guests that have podcasts. And if you notice, a lot of people who have podcasts are now going to be regulars on Fox. Tucker Carlson, I think, is going back. So it's the form of media that has to be done. And that's why my media team, I took a long break this summer because I had so much vacation accumulated. And I just really wanted to take a look at what I've done and where I'm going, and came back and they had a podcast all set up for me, ready to start. And so I'm interviewing people who I met through my career who changed my life. And they'll tell their stories. And they're not all very pretty stories. And one of my guests is a 90-year-old madam who serviced a lot of high officials in the police department and went to jail for it. And then there's kids, that are going to college that I raised, that I'd known since they were 13. And as we move on, we'll find more people to. It's sort of like a new way of writing a book, too. Because the book stories can be very long. And I have a book I wrote, it's 420 pages, and they wanted me to reduce it to 80 pages and throw someone under the table. I said, I'm not going to do that. That's not who I am.
So you've been doing Zoom appearances, the pandemic and all that. What was the trigger point where you're like, what I'm doing is not adequate?
It was just such a hassle. I mean, the first thing they got was this backdrop that I have, which is now being turned into a digital backdrop, which is very clumsy. And I have one at home and it's very hard. And then it was just, I've done Dr. Drew, Chris Salvedo, Harvey Brownstone, John Stubbs, Lynn's Warriors, Talk Radio Europe. I did a policy exchange for all the trafficking organizations in Congress, and Bruce Torres, TNT, and Talk Radio Europe. It just went on and on and on. And they said, you need your own show. So my media team kind of pushed me into it. And they said, we've got to clean this up. And then they kept telling me what kind of microphones to buy and cameras and so on and so forth. And then we asked a neighbor about setting this up for professional studio. And they said, oh, there's only one person. You got to go to George. Got to go to George the Tech. And we called you, and it was really one-stop shopping because you came in, you did everything. And it's like, wow.
It was really satisfying to do, honestly, because first I got to work with you and your organization, the amazing people that are on your staff, and just getting to work in a different environment, because my core competency all these years is voiceover actors, and now getting to work in this different world, working with yourself and executives was a really amazing shift. And I'm so glad that we got to help you with that. And we found the perfect little nook in your
Yes.
space to set it up.
We put it with the archival room, which is very quiet unless the archivist is here. I mean, I have storage upon storage of stuff, of records and certificates and pictures, and everything's being digitized now. So that's another big project, moving into the brave new world.
Oh, it's incredible, really. So it wasn't that hard for you to carve out a space in your facility to set this
No,
up?
we use the archival room because it's very big and the archives are constantly moving, and she's cataloging and putting them in storage. And now we're starting to pull them out. We're hiring a company to digitize them. And it's pretty exciting. So it's quiet. She's not here all the time. And when she is, I just move her right across the hall into my office.
So what was the biggest, was it the quality of your appearances that improved?
Oh, everything improved. The quality, the sound, because my media team kept saying, "What's that noise we hear behind you?" And your voice is cracking, and you got to look at the person that's interviewing you, and there's got to be a way to do this. And so it just became so complicated, and I was so frustrated. And I asked one of our neighbors in our complex, and they said, "Oh, you got to go to George the Tech," and you just took it over. And so I got to walk into it. And Sonia's been operating it. And I said to her today, "No, it has to be my email that these invites are in. They're in my calendar. I need to know how to set it up myself because with a lot of work we're doing, I mean, we're going to be doing a lot of stuff at 1 o'clock in the morning, and she shouldn't have to come in to set up my studio. I should know how to do that."
Yeah, I mean, as simple as we try to make things, and that was a big part of it. It was getting the quality, but also making it something that you could sit down with minimal numbers of things to remember and
Right.
long checklists. And because I do my own content all the time, I do my webinars, and I have this unbelievable checklist of everything I have to make sure I'm doing right, down to brush your teeth.
Well, I have a 1.5 page checklist, but now she's letting me use it. So I'll become very familiar with it the more I use it.
How often are you going to record your podcast episodes?
We're going to bank several, so I have some freedom. I just ended up filming the announcement of the podcast and a bunch of other stuff. I filmed 4 videos in one day with a camera. It was 8 hours of shooting. It was exhausting, but they're all going up on the website in the next few weeks and announcing all of this stuff and more, and the changes in the program and our scholarship program. I've decided that when I do retire, that the assets will be liquidated and go into an endowment. It'll be managed by the Fuller Foundation. I already have a board of directors made up of young women who graduated through the program in years past. They're bankers and CEOs and PhDs and first responders, and they decide, the scholarship applications come in, and they decide who gets a scholarship and who doesn't. And we even fund scholarships for our alumni's kids. So it's very in-house, but it'll be about $6 million that they'll have to work with. The foundation will handle the money. But I'm very, very excited about that. And it's so nice to see kids pop up. I mean, you have to have been part of the Children of the Night program. And so there's certain questions you have to answer that only if you were involved in the program you would know. I have a young lady who I knew since she was 13 years old. And she scored higher than any other child that had ever gone through our school in our shelter home. She had to go through her journey, and she's married, divorced, had kids. She's been through it and tatted up, but she's really smart, and she's going through school, and we love her. So
I love that you're using your own resources that you've helped grow and you've helped nurture, and you have a never-ending supply.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, prostitution's generational. It just is. And it's to take care of our family. These are the kids that were on television that told their stories and raised the money for Children of the Night. We're exclusively privately supported. I've raised over $60 million with private donations since my beginning. This is our 46th year. We're getting ready for our 50th year anniversary, which we'll do an event. We're not big event people. We only kind of do them when we have to.
Yeah. Well, you're putting your money where you really need it to go. And not splashing out. You're not a big flashy organization.
No.
You're boots on the ground, getting your hands dirty kind of organization, which is pretty amazing. So tell us again, what's the name of the podcast we're going to be looking for?
Well, the website is called the Dr. Lois Lee Show.
Okay.
And the website is Dr. Lois, Lois, Lee, Lee.com.
I just appreciate your time. I know you have so much on your plate all the time, but I appreciate you sitting down with me.
Well, thank you, George, because none of this would have been possible without you. And you did such a superb job. It's like we're well on our way.
Happy to be there to support. It's an honor.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of the day. Thanks again.
You too. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.